Okay, so how does a budget that is legally designed to reduce global poverty end up paying for empty hotel rooms right here in the UK?
It is wild, yeah.
It really is. Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are looking at a pretty startling review from the Independent Commission for Aid Impact, or ICAI, published in March 2026.
Right.
It basically dissects the UK's management of official development assistance.
Which is essentially, your tax money that is earmarked for foreign aid, and the findings outline this massive systemic failure.
Yeah, we are talking about billions of pounds here.
Exactly. Billions meant for the world's most vulnerable that ended up, well, just being completely absorbed by domestic administrative chaos.
So to understand how this actually happens, we really have to look at the budget rules themselves. The UK committed to spending a specific percentage of its national income on foreign aid.
Right. It was 0.5%, and it is actually heading down to 0.3% in 2027.
Yeah, but the core issue is that it wasn't just a target. The government treated that percentage as a strict floor, but also a strict ceiling, like an absolute limit.
And that rigid ceiling is really the catalyst for this entire mess, because the target had to be hit precisely, down to the decimal point.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the FCDO, they were essentially forced into the role of the government's financial shock absorber.
Meaning what exactly?
Well, if the overall economy shrank or, say, another department suddenly spent more aid-eligible money, the FCDO had to make immediate, really drastic cuts to long-term overseas programs.
Oh, why?
Just to make the math work perfectly on paper, they completely abandoned long-term value for money.
Okay, so it's like, imagine a family has a strict monthly budget for groceries, but then the roof springs a leak.
Right.
Because the total household budget has a strict ceiling. You don't borrow money or use a rainy day fund to fix the roof. You just, stop buying food.
That is actually a perfect way to look at it, because the budget couldn't expand. Any unexpected roof leak automatically cannibalized the grocery money,
Right.
which in this case is the existing foreign aid programs. And the biggest roof leak of all was what the report calls in-donor refugee costs.
Wait, let's just pause there for a second. How does spending money inside the UK on domestic asylum processing even qualify as foreign aid?
I know, it sounds super counterintuitive.
Yeah, isn't there some sort of international standard to prevent countries from just, spending their aid budgets on themselves?
There is, yeah. The OECD acts as the international watchdog for wealthy nations' aid. And under their rules, first-year domestic asylum costs can legally be counted as official development assistance.
Really?
Yeah, it is meant to recognize the financial burden of hosting refugees.
Okay, but surely there are safeguards, right?
Right.
Like you can't just take money meant to build a medical clinic abroad and use it to cover local administrative bills.
Well, you can if you lump both sets of costs under the exact same capped budget.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and that was the UK's fatal structural flaw here. They put these highly unpredictable, demand-driven domestic asylum costs into the exact same fixed pot as their long-term global poverty programs.
So when domestic costs spiked, the overseas programs just paid the price.
Exactly.
Okay, so if domestic costs are suddenly eating the foreign aid budget, where is that domestic overspend actually coming from?
Largely from the Home Office. And this is where the exploitation of technicalities really comes in.
How so?
So the OECD guidelines recommend taking a, quote, conservative approach when reporting these domestic asylum costs. But instead, the UK actively chose an incredibly expansive approach.
Just to stretch the definition of aid as far as it would go.
Exactly.
Meaning they literally build empty hotel rooms to the foreign aid budget. Wait, how does the Home Office even end up with so many empty rooms in the first place?
Honestly, it comes down to abysmal forecasting and really rigid contract structures.
Yeah.
The Home Office block-booked all these private hotels anticipating a certain number of asylum seekers.
And the numbers were lower.
Right. When those numbers didn't materialize, they were locked into these contracts for empty rooms.
That is wild.
And because of that expansive interpretation of the rules we talked about, they just passed those bills over to the FCDO's aid budget to balance their own books.
So the FCDO just has to surrender the cash to cover another department's bad forecasting.
They did, yeah. Mid-year in 2024, the FCDO was forced to hand over £991 million.
Almost £1 billion. Just mid-year.
Just to cover those domestic overspends. And by the end of that year, 20.1% of the total UK aid budget, which is about £2.8 billion, went straight to domestic refugee costs.
That is staggering.
Yeah, it is £1 billion more than the UK spent on actual global humanitarian aid that year.
You know, this isn't just a bureaucratic rounding error. This shows how billions of your tax pounds promised to global stability are just quietly swallowed by domestic mismanagement.
Right. It is a rigid accounting rule combined with a few exploited loopholes that fundamentally rerouted the money. It really forces us to look at the broader incentives. When a strict budget ceiling encourages government departments to pass their domestic bills to the foreign aid budget just to balance their own books, I mean, the system itself is broken.
Absolutely. So if wealthy nations are increasingly exploiting these technical loopholes to basically spend quote-unquote foreign aid on themselves, does the international community need to fundamentally rewrite the definition of global development?
It is a really important question.
Definitely something to mull over the next time you hear a promise about global impact.